Hi everyone, my name's Jen. I'm an author and a book reviewer. It is halfway through the year, so I decided to sit down today and talk to you about my reading year so far. We can have some reflection, we can answer some questions. That's what we're going to be doing today, and I would love for you to answer these questions as well in the comment section down below if the mood takes you. Also, I don't think you may be able to just spy the bottom, but over the weekend I finally put my prints up in my office and I love them. So this space is really coming together now. I'll do a cutaway so you can see me do a quick walk through. I cut out all of the prints in brown paper and then mapped out the gallery wall using that and blue tack so that I could make sure that everything was in the right spot. And then I've got a mixture of nails and hooks, command strips and command hooks. So I may talk about using those in a reading vlog at some point because, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I've definitely learned things by putting these prints up. I'm just really pleased with how the space is looking now. So I just thought I would show you because I had showed you some of it in a vlog before, but now more things have been added. Really all that needs to come into this room now is a filing cabinet, and then I can file all my taxes and contracts and all of that stuff away because they're in a pile on the floor at the moment. And then that's about it. Anyway, we're here to talk about books, and I thought before I jump into the questions, and I'm using the mid-year freak out tag questions, I would just, I've got wig hairs in my mouth, do excuse me. I thought I would just pull up my story graph and we can look at the books that I've read so far this year, kind of remind myself. So let me, I am living life on the edge today because I think I've got about 10% battery on my phone, but we're gonna screen record anyway. Let's do it. There we go, screen record. I'm sure that most of you are familiar with Storygraph, but they are an independently owned business, similar to Goodreads, but I prefer them. All right, so here are my reading stats. And I'm really, really surprised by this. So I put my goal as 100 books. I don't actually care how many books I read. I just put that in every year. And then it's saying at the moment that I've read 77 books so far this year, which means that I'm ahead of my arbitrary goal by 26 books, but I didn't read anything in May. So I'm really surprised that I'm still that far ahead. I don't care about being that far ahead, it doesn't matter, but I am surprised. So I've read 77 books. These are my moods that I've read in. Oh yeah, and I've read nearly 20,000 pages. So it's not surprising that my most read moods are reflective, emotional, dark, mysterious, challenging, and sad. I mean, I don't think you come here for me to recommend the, you know, really happy books. Occasionally I read those, but not very often. Then pace-wise, this isn't surprising to me either. 14% slow, 14% fast, and 72% medium paced. Though to be fair, I don't know how they gauge this kind of thing, and I don't know if that's something that's set by publishers or if it is user-based. I have no idea. Also not surprising, page numbers. The majority of books that I have read, 58% of them, are under 300 pages. And I would think probably not much less than 300 pages. Then 39%, 300 to 499 pages. Only 3% over 500 pages, in fact. So if I click on that, you can see it's 2 books. Can I find out what those books are? It will be The Great Circle, won't it? Yeah, The Great Circle and the Ruth Ozeki book. That was it. So those are the really big books I've read so far this year. I have read 16% non-fiction and 84% fiction. And then genres, I am surprised by how much poetry and short stories I've read according to this. I never feel like I read as much poetry and as many short stories as I would like to. But then when I look back on it at the end of the year, they do actually account for a lot of my reading. I don't know why they feel less prominent when I am actually getting to them, but it's good to know that I am getting to them. So my main one, literary fiction. Then we've got contemporary, poetry, short stories, mystery, queer fiction, thrillers, memoir, horror, blah, 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 blah. blah blah. And then after that we've got format, and I've read 86% in print format and 14% in audio format. Is anybody surprised that my most read author is Nicci French at 8 books, which is me rereading nearly all of the Frida Klein series, and then also rereading The Unheard when I was running a book club for that earlier in the year. So if we look at the months, we can see here that in May I didn't really read anything. In fact, this is a lie, because it's saying that I read about, I think, 3 books in May, but I didn't. That was just me forgetting to log that I'd finished them in April. So it's gone over into May, but I read nothing in May at all. So there we go. And I have no reviews because I don't use Storygraph, or, well, I don't use Goodreads at all anymore, but I don't use those places to review. I just use them to catalogue my reading because I find it helpful. So there we go, 77 books. And if you would like to see the books that I've read so far, I will do a quick run through here of the books that I have read, and I'll insert some music here. It'll only be about 20 seconds or so. If you're interested in all the titles that I've read, here you go. There we go. And if anyone is visually impaired, or if anyone would like to see the list of books that were just on the screen, then I will list my Storygraph in the description box down below, and you can use a screen reader to have the list read out to you. Okay, so I have the questions here from the mid-year freakout tag, and let's get to them. So the first question is, what is the best book that you have read so far this year? And hilariously, it's the first book that I read. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It meant my reading year got off to a great start, but also I'm still looking for a book that matches it, and it's 6 months later and I haven't found that yet. And that is Elena Knows by Claudia Pinero, which is translated from the Spanish by Frances Riddle. This is a book that I read because I read all of the long-listed books for this year's Barbellion Prize, which is a prize that celebrates work by disabled and chronically ill authors. To be honest, I'm not sure that any of you need me to talk about it anymore because I've spoken about it a lot, and I'll link my Barbellion Prize reading vlog in the description box down below. But if you haven't heard me talk about it, it's about a woman called Elena who is adamant that her daughter Rita has been murdered. Everyone else thinks that her daughter died by suicide, and Elena is really out to try and prove them wrong. It's set over the course of one day, and she's going to visit someone who she thinks has answers. It's written split up into crypt time, using the medication that she takes for her Parkinson's to show how all of that frames her day. It is wonderful disability representation. I thought that the storyline was both gripping and moving, and it was kind of a genre all of its own, because it was an amalgamation of all different things, and I just thought it was great. So question number 2 is best sequel. I don't think I've read any sequels this year apart from reading the Frida Klein series, so obviously those are my favorites. Won't bore you with that again. So they're the only sequels that I've read. Though I did also read Bitter by Akwake Emezi recently, which is the prequel to Pet, which I guess is like a sequel, and I enjoyed that one too. I didn't actually love it as much as I loved Pet, but I enjoyed it. I read it recently because it was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and I did a whole reading my most anticipated books video, so I'll link that in the description box down below if you'd like to go hear my thoughts on that as well. Question number 3, linking in with most anticipated releases, is what is a new release that you're excited about but which you haven't got round to reading yet? And I think I would have to go for Companion Piece by Ali Smith, which is I don't know if it's the 5th book in the quartet. Would that make it a quintet? Is that a quintet? Or if it's just something that, you know, as the title would suggest, you can read alongside. But that came out recently and I haven't read it yet. I haven't read Briefly a Delicious Life by Nell, which is a strange ghost story, a queer ghost story, which I am looking forward to reading. I also haven't read Life Ceremonies by Sayaka Murata, which is translated from the Japanese by Ginny Tapley Takamori. This is her debut short story collection, I think, or at least it's her debut being translated into English. She is the author of Convenience Store Woman and Earthlings, and it's out this month in July, so I would like to read that one soon as well. Question number 4 is, what is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? Well, it was the best day of the year on, I don't know when it was, Thursday, Wednesday, when I got book post that was the new Nicci French book, which isn't out until October. It's called The Favour, and I have like no willpower, so I have started reading it already. So I'll talk to you about it once I've finished reading it, and I'm really hoping that it's good. But the premise is that a woman is contacted by a man she used to date when she was a teenager, and he's calling in a favour, and he tells her that he has to go to this place in the countryside. He can't explain why, and she must meet him there, and she cannot tell anyone else that she's going. And she has a soft spot for him. She feels bad about how things ended, however many years ago it's been. So she decides, all right, I will do this favour, even though I don't know what the favour is. Obviously, not great things are going to happen, and I am very excited for those not great things to happen. Another most anticipated book for me is Alice Wong's memoir, which is coming out in August. It's called The Year of the Tiger. Alice is the person who runs Disability Visibility, which is an online project, but also was then later a book. And if you can pre-order Alice's book, if you enjoyed Disability Visibility, which I know many of you did, then please do pre-order her book. 1, because the book is going to be amazing, but 2, Alice has been in intensive care for the last month, and I know she will appreciate, obviously she'll appreciate getting out of intensive care the most, but in the meantime, support via book purchases would also be massively appreciated. So if you've been meaning to pre-order that, please do. Question number 5 is, what is the biggest disappointment? So, spoiler, because this vlog hasn't come out yet, but Bear by Marian Engel was a book that I ended up, I didn't quite DNF it, in that I got very far through and then I ended up skimming the end, but it was pretty much a DNF. And it was a book I was really excited about because it was blurbed by like Margaret Atwood and Daisy Johnson and lots of other people actually. I think, is the book here? I've read it very, very recently. I'm not sure where it is, but I will be talking about it in a vlog soon. But I was super excited about it because it's based on folklore, and it's about a woman who is like really into a bear who she meets when she's on like secondment somewhere, and then they enter into a sexual relationship, but it was really taboo, and I think it was banned, and it was written in the 70s or something. Anyway, it just ended up being a massive disappointment, and I just didn't enjoy it at all, so that wasn't very fun. But I think probably my 2 biggest disappointments this year were Salt Lick by Lulu Allison, which is one of the books that was longlisted for this year's Women's Prize. I read the majority of the books on the Women's Prize longlist this year, and all of them on the shortlist, and this one was definitely my biggest disappointment. It felt as though the author had kind of used marginalised characters to further their plot and not really think about the implications of that and not make them into 3D characters. It was really quite awkward, but I talked about that in the Women's Prize longlist vlog, which again I will link down below. I read books that were recommended to me via algorithms, and perhaps not surprisingly, I didn't end up loving all of them, and the biggest disappointment was Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw. And it was really weird because I had actually seen quite a few people say how much they loved this book. Then I read it and I absolutely detested it. And then, not because I read it and detested it, just fate meant that afterwards in wrap-ups of people that I already followed, I just kept seeing people saying how much they also hated it. So I don't know how I didn't see any of the negative reviews before I decided to pick it up, but it's about a group of friends who go to Japan for a like pre-wedding party. I just didn't believe that any of them were friends. I thought that the writing was overwrought and the metaphors and similes were just ridiculous. It was not a great book. It was not the one. But then at the other end of the scale, we've got question number 6, which was, what was your biggest surprise read? And within that video too, another book that I picked up based on an algorithm recommendation was Itza by Rios de Lulu, and I absolutely adored that book, so much so that I immediately bought another book of hers. It pitches itself as a book about Mexican water witches, and I think that makes it sound more like genre fiction than it is. It's actually very experimental, poetry-like prose, very ethereal. Think of like The Waves by Virginia Woolf, very, very sparse, but you get a rich sense of the world that these characters are living in and the connections between characters over generations. It was just remarkable. It felt like you were swimming in it, you know, just a little bit, maybe a little bit lost, but it was keeping you afloat and you were just very happy to be in that book, to be experiencing it. Question number 7 is new favourite author. Now, for a favourite author, I like to have read many of their books before I can firmly say, okay, you are a new favourite. But a new favourite discovery for me this year was definitely Emily Rapp Black. She has written several books, including the one that I read this year, which was Frida, Kahlo and My Left Leg. And it was a short memoir where she was talking about being an amputee herself and her relationship with Frida Kahlo, and discussing that through their shared love of art, but also talking about trauma, medical trauma, relationships, being a mother and wanting to be a mother and what that means. And I just thought that it was this fantastic kaleidoscopic patchwork of thought processes, and I just loved following her on that journey. So she was definitely my favourite new discovery this year, and I'm very keen to read more of her writing too. Question number 8, newest fictional crush. I'm gonna twist this question like I think many people do and say, like, these are writers that I have been crushing on this year, in the sense that I have absolutely fallen in love with their writing style. So Julia Armfield, I already was familiar with her work. I had read her collection Salt Slow a couple of years ago, but I read her book Our Wives Under the Sea this year, which is her debut novel that came out in, I think, March, and it's a queer love story about 2 women, one of whom goes on a submarine and is lost for several months and comes back and isn't really herself. But the writing in it is just absolutely chef's kiss, beautiful. And I've also fallen in love with Jessica Auer's writing, which again is a spoiler because in a forthcoming reading vlog I'll be reading her book Cold Enough for Snow, which is a novel published by Fitzcarraldo, and it's under 100 pages, and it's one of those short, perfectly formed pieces of writing that is just the right length. You know, it does what it sets out to do and then very confidently says, okay, we can end now. And I just respected that hugely. And the sentence level writing was also fantastic. So I'll be speaking about that in an upcoming video soon. Question number 9 is, in case you're wondering what I'm looking at, my notebook is here. Who is a new favourite character? I really liked Win in Build Your House Around My Body. It's a book that I was completely wrapped up in when I read the beginning of it, and then I thought the ending was a bit clumsy, and the more I thought about it, I think it unraveled a little bit in my brain. But I did enjoy Win's character. She's the main character, and it's a a split timeline novel steeped in Vietnamese folklore, and whilst, as I said, it is a little bit all over the place in parts and probably has a few too many characters, it is a bit magical. So I really enjoyed reading her perspective. I loved Badger in Lisette Auton's middle grade book, which I'm going to be speaking about in a second. But probably my favourite character was Dana from Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, which probably also falls under that umbrella of what books surprised me. I mean, Octavia E. Butler is a genius. Everyone loves her, but I don't tend to read a lot of pure science fiction and fantasy, and that's what she writes. And we read Kindred for my Patreon book club last season. We do one a season. And even though I knew she was a genre fiction writer, in my head I thought, I think this is going to be a bit like The Handmaid's Tale, writing style wise. And it is not. It is completely plot driven. And yes, there is a lot of emphasis on Dana's character, the main character in particular, but it is very, very fast paced. And for that reason, I was surprised at how much I loved it, because that's not something that I tend to gravitate towards. But she was able to really get the reader invested in what was going on and really feel for these characters, even though you're thrown into the action right from the get-go. I'm sure that you're familiar with Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, but if you're not, it is about a woman called Dana in the 70s, which is when it was written. She's a black woman in America, and she mysteriously time travels to the early 1800s, and it turns out that she's been summoned by the son of a plantation owner, and she time travels back to him whenever he feels like his life is in danger. And obviously Dana, being transported as a black woman to the early 1800s, her life becomes in danger whenever she is transported back. It was the most tense read. It was incredible, and I think about that book a lot, especially think about Dana a lot. Yeah, it was fantastic. Then question number 10, we've got a book that made you cry. Lots of books made me cry because I cry a lot. So Eleanor Knows by Claudia Pinero, I was just a mess throughout most of that book. I spoke about that earlier in this video. What Willow Says by Lynn Buckle, which I read in the same video, also made me cry because the writing was just, I don't know, it tapped into something. I just thought it was really fantastic. It's very spiritual. That feels like a nothing word, but it tapped into something really primal, connection with nature, and talking about disability through nature. And I just loved it. There's this amazing image of trees doing sign language. It was a novel about the relationship between a grandmother and her granddaughter and exploring deafness together, and it was amazing. Then we've got a book that made you happy. I mentioned Lisette Auton in the favourite character bit because I said Badger was one of my favourite characters. What's it called? The Secret of Haven Point by Lisette Auton, that's it. Made me so happy. It's a book that's set on a lighthouse near Marsden Rock, which is right near where I grew up in the northeast of England, and it's about a group of disabled kids who live in this lighthouse and they have adventures together. And it was just so wonderful to read a group of disabled kids where the language surrounding disability was just so fantastic, and no one was used as a plot device and everyone got to be themselves. And at the beginning, before the novel began, Lisette included this prologue where she was talking about the importance of language surrounding disability and how she had put this novel together and the community aspects when it comes to disability. It was just, it made my heart so happy. And then Grounding by Lulu Ellender was also a book that made me really happy. It's a non-fiction book. And it did make me cry as well. Lulu wrote it after her mother died, and she was worried that they were going to lose the family home, and the garden was her mum's pride and joy, and she was trying to sort through the memories that she had of her mother whilst distracting herself through gardening, and at the same time worrying that she was gardening for someone else who was going to take over this house because she wasn't going to be able to keep it herself. So it was a mourning of both place and person, and I just thought that it was really, really wonderful. Sad, but definitely made me happy. Question number 12 is favourite book to film adaptation. I don't think that I have watched anything that I have read the book of this year. Mr. M and I did watch the Jack Ryan series this year, which I know is based on a book, and it's with, what's his name? John Krasinski? Is that his name? Is that his name? I'm gonna go with that. I think that is his name. Jim from The Office. Very weird seeing him being in a kind of serious role. He's kind of playing a James Bond type character. The first series was just stereotypical, and to be honest, we were watching it to kind of take the mick out of it because it was just not that great. But I haven't read the books. And then also recently watched Big Boys, which is a series on Channel 4 following a group of friends in freshers year, and it was just really lovely because it's about Jack, who is out for the first time, and he's got a straight best friend, Danny, but Danny is going through a lot of stuff at home and a lot of stuff with his mental health, and I thought Danny's character in particular was just fantastic. But I haven't read the book, so I can't say that it's an amazing adaptation in that sense, but I'm sure it is because it's written by the person who, you know, wrote the book. Question number 13 is, what is your favourite review that you have written this year? Well, I review in video format on here, but I also review in written format for Toast Clothing. And I think that my favourite article that I wrote for them this year was about Wrecked by Tom DeFreston. And I did consider reading it to you here, but I feel like maybe you don't need me to do that. Instead, I will just link the article in the description box down below, just because I feel like when I'm writing reviews, the tone is quite different than when I am just reviewing books and speaking quite casually. So if you're interested in a more formal type of reviewing where I play around with language, because, you know, I am a writer and that is my job, then I will link that in the description box down below. Question number 14 is, what is the most beautiful book that you have bought this year? I think it's The Need by Helen Phillips. I have admired this cover for so long, and I ended up purchasing it and reading it because I did a vlog where I read other booktubers' favourite books of 2021, and this was also a book that I adored, but this creepy silhouette on the front is just brilliant, and the colour scheme is wonderful, and I love the gradient, and I will insert the cover here. But yeah, I think that is great. Question number 15 is, what books do you want to read by the end of the year? I want to read more crime books because, you know, I've read all of the Nicci French books now, and I haven't really found a crime author that I love as much. I really do like Attica Locke, and I have also enjoyed the Roxanne Weary series as well, but I would just love to read more, and I have some on my shelf, so I may do some dedicated vlogs to reading crime fiction. I also want to read the Moomin series because I've never read them. I've read abridged versions, and I used to love the TV show when I was a kid, but I've never read the novels, and I just feel like they would be super comforting, so I would like to do that at some point this year too. I want to get round to reading my most anticipated books from last year that I haven't read yet, and I've made a note of those. So those were The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enriquez, Bloom by Sarah Westcott, which was a poetry collection, The Sleeping Beauties, or The Beauties? I've written this down wrong. I think it's Sleeping Beauties by Suzanne O'Sullivan, which is a non-fiction book looking at strange medical phenomena. The High House by Jessie Greengrass, which is a climate crisis novel. Pilgrim Bell by Cabaret Bar, which is their second full-length collection. From the Neck Up by Alia Whiteley. I love her novels, and this is a short story collection by her. I've never read any of her short stories, and I just think that she'd be brilliant. This is speculative fiction. And then Learning to Sleep by John Burnside, which is another poetry collection. So those are some of the books that I would like to get to by the end of this year, including most anticipated books from this year as well. And I would like to do another video where I read some of the oldest books on my shelves as well. I tend to do that once a year, going through hauls, looking at videos, calling myself out, hauls from 6-7 years ago, seeing which books I haven't read yet, and then trying to get through them. And question number 16 is new favourite community members. I don't think that I have found new booktubers recently that I've been watching religiously, but people that I have been watching a lot and enjoying recently who I perhaps haven't mentioned as much on here before are Okie Dokie Boki and Sunny's Book Nook, and I will link both of their channels in the description box down below because I think that they're rather great. So that's the book chat for today. I would love to know how many books you have read so far this year, and I would also love to know your answers to these questions or some of these questions if you would like to share them. I will write them in the description box down below so you can easily copy and paste and put them in a comment if you would like to. If you enjoyed this video and you're not already subscribed, I would love you to subscribe, and if you like my content on here and would like to consider supporting me on Patreon, that's always very much appreciated. I will link that in the description box down below as well. I hope you're all having a good start to the week. I'll speak to you very soon and sending lots of love. Bye.